Hey, it's Kevin Lawrence here, Coach Kevin to many of you. I'm back. After a few weeks off of doing these videos, had a chance to kind of recover from this crazy virus situation and back to sharing with you some of the ideas that are coming to me and things I want to share with you from what I'm learning from other leaders and executives around the world. So today I want to share with you in our newsletter, we're talking about this thing called the 4 Forces of Growth, which is my new book that'll be coming later this year or beginning of 2021. Very interesting, the concepts that I've been working on starting last summer and how it shapes into what we're dealing with today. And we got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of chaos. And for many people, it's about where do we focus to get the greatest impact? And there's lots of different opinions on this. So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the stuff from this material from this new book. And I think you'll find it interesting. So in the newsletter that we sent, last newsletter, we talked about this model, and it really gets into the 4 forces of flight and that make airplanes fly and how it relates to business, same principles. And we've got opportunities that pull us up, and that is like the lift on an airplane, and problems that pull us down, and that's like gravity or weight. We've got courage that pushes us ahead, and that's like the throttle on an airplane or thrust. And then we've got fear that takes us back, and that's like the drag or the friction that holds a plane back or wants to slow it down. So a CEO, like a pilot, has got to help navigate the plane to have it keep up in the air and defying gravity. And that's really what a great business is. It's defying gravity on a consistent basis. So in this model, the challenge is that we're not even aware that we're managing these forces sometimes, and we make decisions that take us the wrong direction. So basically, we pull back on the throttle in the plane and cause a stall, or we end up pointing the plane down to the ground and create a nosedive. And inadvertently, and that's obviously got some serious consequences if you're a pilot, and same if you're a CEO or a leader of a team. And what we want to do is stay in this coveted growth place where that's where the action happens. And in many ways, it's counterintuitive, which I'll get to in a minute. Really counterintuitive. And it's almost like pouring out of a Tetra Pak container, or same with an oil jug if you're putting oil into a vehicle. Pouring it out the bottom hole, the hole that's the closest to where you want to put it, seems the most logical. But it creates an airlock, which causes the stuff to splash out or glug out, as you put. Yet if you pour it from the hole out the top, which is the farthest from where you want to pour, it allows air in and a smooth pour. So growth is very counterintuitive, and that's why very few people can consistently produce growth. It's darn hard, but there's some counterintuitive things that you need to learn. And often it's the saying less is more. You know, good writing or communication, less is more. In racing or cars, slower can be faster. You go slow in to go fast out. And the better example, though, is on super bikes and motorcycles. And I love motorcycles and motorsports. But if you look closely at the image here, you can see that tire is pointing out towards us, away from the corner. Logic would say you would turn into the corner. But on a motorcycle, because you're balancing the dynamics and the momentum of the bike, you actually turn the opposite way when you want to go fast. You achieve this by pushing down on the bar this way, and then the motorcycle goes that way. It's counterintuitive. It's the only way to ride a motorcycle really, really fast, and you have to learn it and kind of rewire your brain to make it happen. And this is what happens with a lot of leaders in growing companies. We don't rewire our brain for growth, and we wonder why we struggle with it. So open-mindedness is critical, and we got to get past some of this logic and thinking about the left brain and the right brain, and we got to actually understand the difference and tap into the right kinds of thinking to make the right decisions. So, you know, consistent growth requires making a very few decisions very well. And the best CEOs I've had the great fortune to work with are masters of this. They're able to not focus on things that take us in the wrong direction and pick the right things more often, not always, more often. And one of the biggest pieces that's missing often with teams is debate time and knowing what to debate, or debating the issues that really, truly move the business ahead. So we've got a model. Part of my book is to create a model to help us debate ideas for growth. There's lots of different models out there that I've learned over the years. This is just the simple version I like to boil it down to. I just call it likelihood and impact. It's about as simple as it can get. Likelihood is how likely are we to be able to implement or get the results that we intend from this idea, whatever the idea happens to be. And then impact. What is the dollar impact on the business? Is this going to be worth $5 or 5,000 or 50,000 bucks or 50 million bucks? Don't know. But likelihood of a success and impact on the business. And I break it down and make it simple: pennies, nickels, and dollars. And you can read about this more on our site. But if it's got a high likelihood but a low impact, that's a nickel. So it's got, the impact is not that great, but you got a good chance. So it's like you're picking up a nickel off the ground fairly easy, not horrible. Down at the bottom, you've got a low likelihood of achieving it, and it's a low impact. That's a penny. You should hopefully step over those if you've got better opportunities. Not saying you should waste money. Over in the right quadrant is where it gets more interesting, and that's where leaders and execs should be focusing, is on the dollars. It's a high impact, high likelihood. We usually go there fairly easily. We get those ones covered, but that's where we need to stay focused on them. It's almost like senior people should stay focused on the right, not get distracted on the left. But then there's this juicy one down at the bottom called R&D dollars. Now this is the very, very important piece. This is dollars, but you've got to work to get them. You got to hustle. You got to do a lot of research and development to be able to extract those out of the system. In an article I wrote recently, I talked about it's like a mining company drilling holes to see the concentration of the minerals under the surface to see if they can make something of it, make a mine or a viable mine out of it. So these R&D dollars need some additional time. Usually has a long-term payoff. A lot of people shy away from this stuff because it looks too hard or too risky. But if you spend time and energy here, it can pay off. And a senior exec or a leader might spend 15% of their time in that R&D dollars category, and 70% of their time on the dollars, and then 15% maybe on the nickels. The key, and why this model is so important, is we have to train our people, even on the front lines, to be careful of getting distracted by pennies. And if they pick up, you can pick them up in a half a second, great, but not to put a whole bunch of work into pennies. And for senior leaders, not to get distracted by nickels, because the teams and the frontline teams, they should focus on those. They're important. But usually it's the stuff over on the right that we need the more senior people to focus on. So the idea is to chase those and stay on the right-hand side, and really obviously get the easy dollars, but don't forget about the hard dollars, because they can often be worth it. And it's more likely that your competition will walk past those as well. And the whole idea here is we want to step over nickels and pick up dollars. That's the whole idea. We don't want to step over the dollar and get distracted by the nickel, which is unfortunately what happens when you don't really debate and figure out what the ideas are that you can have the most success with and have an impact. I've been in companies that do a couple $100 million in revenue. People get excited about this big initiative, but the impact of the bottom line is about $17,000. Well, we probably could burn $17,000 of time talking about it. That means we shouldn't touch it. Somebody should, but the senior team should let it go. And in a few, 2 or 3 layers down in your organization, it would be a perfect project. So the idea is to stay up in that growth mode where the opportunities meet courage, right? Where we implement those big things. And the way that we filter these ideas and maintain that growth is to stay up there in the upper right of the upper right. So on the dollars and R&D dollars of the growth box. Now, you can also do it on the where courage meets problems. That's the optimization box. It's a good place. It's good, but optimizing won't give you growth. It gives you optimizing. It gives you better margins, better profits, lower SG&A. It's a good place, better systems, maybe better customer service. But growth needs a focus on growth. So ideally, we got both. Based on your company, your mix between optimization and growth might change. Here's a case study of restaurants and some things you might want to do. You can find more about this on a website, but on our website. But basically, the dollars is to start feeding nurses, doctors, and police officers, right? And that's something that one of the executives would lead. This is a restaurant that was affected in this crazy virus thing. But the R&D dollars for the future of a restaurant, maybe it's prepackaged meals sold through retail, or subscription meals, or taking over closed restaurants and doing something else with it, or a food truck. Like, who knows? There's pivot ideas that takes them a bit more work that require more energy. So you can look at this yourself a little bit later on. The pennies would be using the restaurant as a yoga studio. Not a huge amount of revenue there, probably, and probably some health issues from the health boards you have to deal with. And increasing takeout orders from 10 to 15 per night. That's a great idea. That's in the solid nickels. And that's a great thing to focus on. You're just not going to put a lot of strategic time into that for a restaurant. So these are examples, not always the best examples. You can have your own that might be better or more relevant if you're a restaurateur. But the idea is where the big dollars, and then where the big dollars you have to work harder on. So I encourage you to plot your ideas. What are the ideas that you and your team have, whether it's that optimization box or that growth box, so you can evaluate them and move ahead, and drop the pennies, delegate the nickels and let the team run with it. And then you chase those dollars and stay focused on those dollars. So that is the 4 forces of growth that we're working on. If you have ideas or things you want some assistance with on that, let us know. You know where we are. We're always here to help. And the final thought I'll leave you with, and I'll just stop sharing here. The final thought I'll leave you with is, how do you make this an amazing rest of the week? What are the 2 or 3 or 4 things you've got to do to step up and make the biggest impact you can this week? There's all kinds of strange stuff going on in the world, as there is every week. But how do you make this a great week and get a few more things that help you to focus on growth and help your business to move ahead, help your team to be focused on the things that will provide the biggest payback, and ideally drop a few of the pennies and nickels if you can. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. All the best.